Calaveras County. I'm Mike Taylor. John Wade couldn't be with us tonight, and well, I want to get right to it because we've got Rick Niblack with us, and you've got a car repair shop here in San Andreas, correct?
Yes, I do.
And you were telling me just before we started here, you've been in that business for quite some time. Where'd you start out in it?
Oh my goodness, goes back to early 70s in a big company, a construction company, and worked on everything from bulldozers and cranes and forklifts, big trucks, the boss's car.
So from the really big wrenches to the really small ones, huh?
Yeah, everything there. And then my biggest time spent is probably with General Motors.
Oh, okay.
Dealership technicians, and spent over 20 years in GM dealerships.
Okay. And so you've seen kind of the whole computerization of the car over that time, haven't you?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing for an experienced mechanic like yourself?
Well, in the beginning, they started throwing all these new little vacuum-operated switches and things like that, and we thought, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? And then next thing you know, oh my goodness, there's 5 miles of wire and a sensor every 3 inches, you know? And, you know, that was, you know, when it first started, it was, you learn something new every day.
Kind of a work in progress sort of thing?
Yeah, yeah, thank goodness. You know, you got to learn something new every day, pretty much.
That's right. That's right. The shade tree mechanic is almost out of the loop with these newer cars, aren't they?
Well, I tell a lot of my customers that I'm in no better shape than they are. If I'm going down the highway and I break down, if I don't have a computer, I don't know what to do.
That's right.
I mean, you know, a lot of cars have like pattern type failures where, you know, if something happens, you know, you kind of know from experience over the years what caused it, you know, and you can, you know, guess. But you know, we got computers for, you know, everything from your theft system, your climate control, your engine, your transmission, and they all communicate with one another. Sometimes, you know, you might think you have a certain type of problem, but it's somewhere else, you know. And,
okay.
you know, they can turn on all kinds of lights, of course. And so, yeah, there's, like I said, if I break down and quit running, you know, there's not a lot I can do sometimes.
You've got to plug it in there and let the computer tell you what's... And is that what has gotten more accurate? Is that sort of diagnosing the problems that the computer does? Yeah.
The computers don't really do any diagnosis for you, and a lot of people think that. Computers, and you know, they want to know a trouble code. Let's say a person wants to know the trouble code. Well, okay, so, you know, what we call an O2 sensor, oxygen sensor, goes in the exhaust of the motor and measures the amount of unburned oxygen in the exhaust, so it knows if the motor's rich or lean or something like that. But you know, that don't mean you have a bad oxygen sensor.
Okay.
You know, we got wiring problems. We got computers. Like I said, wiring problems up here. We got a lot of rodents that tend to like to crawl into your car and keep warm in the wintertime, and they can do some damage.
And they chew while they're camping, don't they?
Yeah, and because I can't imagine eating that stuff. But
yeah, what's the worst you've seen? Has it been a car that's been maybe parked in the field for a little while, and you've come across a real mess, or?
Well, I'm sure the ones in the fields are bad, but actually, just in people's garages, I've seen cars actually totaled because, you know, the way they run the wiring harnesses and things like that. You know, sometimes they're behind a motor and on the firewall, and they jaw them off right to the, you know, the big connectors.
Oh my gosh!
And so you know, you got dual motors.
Nothing you can do with it, right? Yeah.
No, and of course it goes into the insurance. If they have insurance for, you know, full coverage insurance, it goes there, and then they can total a car pretty quick. Because
my gosh,
yeah,
never heard about that. That's an interesting new thing to think about in our rural climate up here. So
you know, they can all be fixed, but when it comes to the, you know, like I said, just like you get a hood bent or anything these days, you know, the cost to fix things is so much that a lot of times it's totaled, you know.
Have you noticed that too, in your years of experience? Because that's been my perception, is that things have become kind of modular, and instead of just being able to buy that one little part, you end up having to buy that whole sort of quarter panel, or you're buying this enormous piece rather than just that little part that might have broken. Was that an industry-wide thing, or?
Well, there's a lot of things like that. A $700 computer usually breaks because of a 30-cent part you could buy at Radio Shack, but you can't take them apart and fix them yourself typically.
Sure.
I mean, you can,
Okay.
but it's just not something that industry does anymore. There's some things you've probably seen, like a Cadillac or something that has a long, narrow third brake light, and they're LEDs. Those are like, if one goes out and you don't like one missing and you want a new one, well, yeah, you can go buy a new one.
Got to buy the whole kit and caboodle, huh?
I've seen them cost $500, $600, $700 for lighting like that.
My goodness.
Some of the manufacturers actually just use little bulbs that can be replaced too.
When people are looking to maintain their cars, what's the thing in your experience that most people forget to take care of? I mean, we're all thinking about, changing the oil well, actually, maybe that's a good place to start. What is the magic mileage for changing your oil? I've heard everywhere from 3 to 6, 7, 8,000 miles. What do you recommend?
Well, that's pretty good. Interesting to think like that. Actually, some of the new car manufacturers have gone back to a 3,000 mile service.
Okay.
There's some that say 10,000. I'm having a hard time with 10,000 because I see, we have, about 500 regular customers that we see on a regular basis, plus a lot of others come in. That, and the regulars, I see their oil. I've seen the people that go 5, 6, 7,000 miles. 5,000 miles is probably a good, safe distance.
Okay.
Using a good oil and good filter. But the ones that my girlfriend's car said 10,000. I tell you what, about 7,000 miles, you touch that oil, it feels like got grit in it.
Grit? Oh gosh.
Like sand almost.
Yeah.
So, but on most cars, 5,000 miles. Like I said, some of the new ones, I believe there were Ford, are down to 3,000 miles again.
Really? Okay.
And a lot of them, if you got a turbo, you want to be sure to use a pure synthetic oil.
Oh, okay.
A lot of cars, Subarus, a lot of those are turboed, and you better use synthetic oil in them because the turbo gets really hot and breaks down the oil.
Oh, okay. So that's the synthetics last a little bit longer, or they can handle the higher temperatures.
Yeah, they can handle the higher temperature without breakdown.
Okay.
And like I said, some of them are recommending 3,000. So,
Maybe depending on how hard you've driven it, maybe this time it's 3,000, next time maybe 5. Huh?
And if you look in most of your maintenance schedules, you'll see normal service and extreme service. Which up here in the hills and stuff, we're pulling hills a lot. We're working our cars a lot harder than we would down on the interstate in the valley.
Yeah.
So we run under the severe duty schedules up here, and those are usually considerably less. A lot of the manufacturers are using they've all switched over for transmission differentials and everything to full synthetics because they're pushing their services out as far as they can, because as soon as a car comes out, you have consumer groups. They take this car, and they look at all those services, and they're going to tell you what it costs to operate this car. Which is a good thing. But it's also caused the manufacturers, in my opinion, to push back services.
Okay.
100,000 miles on transmission oil is no good.
Oh, should be more often then, huh?
Yeah, I have my personal feelings and what I do, but but if all that schedule, you should be pretty well off.
You mentioned having worked for a dealership and now having your own independent shop. What is the trick to finding a good mechanic? What are the kinds of things you look for in somebody who's going to be under your hood for you?
Well, there's a lot of things there. And I've been in business a long time. I know a lot of people, thank goodness, so I can usually get some references from somebody. If I'm looking for somebody. in all honesty, you got to have an ability. But I look for honesty and integrity, a good person, a dependable person. Because if they're all those things, got good integrity and stuff, they typically will work hard for you and do the best job for your customers they can.
Sure. Now we're kind of getting into fall as we're recording this, and so what are the things that people should be thinking about to do to and for their cars as we get into the colder weather?
Well, of course, you want to check your antifreeze. A lot of the cars come with a 100,000-mile antifreeze.
Okay.
Check it. You can check it, for cleanliness. Check it for how low it'll keep from freezing, the temperature protection. Also, tires, when the temperature starts dropping down. This last week, when the temperature dropped, we must have had 5-6 people a day drive in wanting air put in their tires,
Oh, really?
Because their tire light comes on. And those tire lights don't necessarily tell you what your pressure is. It just says that it's lower than it's supposed to be, whether it's one or all of them. So like I said, antifreeze protection. Another thing check is both cold weather when it comes on and hot weather when it comes on is batteries. People don't think about batteries, but the cold can really knock them down.
Okay.
And, it's being cold. So like I said, you don't want to get out, go to the market or something and come out and it's raining and cold and battery's dead, of course.
You've known the battery's been a little weak turning your car over a few mornings. And
it just didn't sound quite right. Should have had you check it.
Yeah. You mentioned tires, and that's obviously where the rubber meets the road. What are the things that people don't think about when they're buying tires? Because I know up here we have a lot of folks that are looking to make that paycheck stretch a little farther, and so maybe they're cutting some corners, and you're going to buy some inexpensive tires that in my experience don't have the longevity and aren't, might not even get you through this winter, let alone the next one. So what are some good tips for tires for folks?
Well, for the most part, you get what you pay for.
Okay. That's a good axiom for it.
But you brought up a good point about the economy. I'm just going to use numbers, and they'll be all relative to one another, but you can buy a set of a Michelin tire or something, and it might cost $900 for your car. Or the same size of tire in a cheap Chinese import might be $400. Well, up here, a Michelin's not going to last 80, 90,000 like they will down in the valley. But they will last twice as long, at least twice as long, up to 3 times as long as the cheaper tire.
Okay.
They also handle better. They're quieter. They typically get better traction and things like that, as long as you have the right tire for your application. You want a 4-wheel drive truck, you don't want a street tire on it, unless you're only staying on the street. So, when it comes to tires, you kind of get what you pay for now. And then you get in those middle ranges, there's some really good tires that are, bang for buck type tire. So instead of the $900 top end tire, you might go into a $600 tire, which is going to be almost twice as good as that $400 tire.
Okay.
So there's, like I said, we got to make compromises because we all can't afford $900, $1,000 set of tires.
That's right. Now, do you always, or some people, in fact, my father used to sometimes buy 2, and then maybe next summer he'd buy the other 2 and, rotate them somehow with that. Do you reckon, and that's another way that you can possibly, save some money because you're only buying 2 tires instead of all 4. Is that something that folks can, I guess I'll say, get away with, or is that something that you tend to try and steer them away from?
Well, okay. About half the cars, it seems like running around nowadays, are all-wheel drive type cars. Okay. All-wheel drive, you cannot replace 2 tires.
2 tires.
I mean, if you look in your owner's manual, it's going to tell you replace all 4 tires at once.
At the same time.
Well, there is some things you can do. you can be off so many 30 seconds an inch from one to another, which is not a big deal. But when they design cars, their braking systems and everything designed to have equal traction all the way around. And surprisingly, when a new tire, let's say it treads this deep, and a worn out tire is this deep, the actual best traction and best handling and performance is right in that middle range. Okay. So you got a set of half wore out tires and you put new ones on. You get different characteristics. When you got more tread, you get squirm. You'll feel a little more squirm in it. I mean, not that you notice it, but
I was going to mention that because I've bought new tires, and the first time you're driving even out of the garage, and the car feels, I was going to say, kind of squishy, and at first you might think, somebody who's used to riding in a Cadillac or a Lincoln or something like that, they might be used to that sort of, I'd call it a smoother ride, but on a car where you're not used to feeling that squishiness, for my layman's term, that's an interesting thing. So the brand new tire isn't necessarily optimum.
No, it might be working better, and if you got a little more snow, have a little more grip and traction. But overall, the best tire is when it's about halfway.
Okay. And how long can a set of tires, let's say you're going kind of that middle of the road, $600 for 4 of them for your car, about how long are those going to last you up here in the foothills?
Well,
Again?
Again.
Yeah. How far are you driving? Are you just driving to the store each day, or are you driving the kids to soccer and football and piano and ballet? And
Well, no, but there's certain cars. I had a little sports car. The tires on it were very expensive. They used to run flat tires and stuff because there's no place for a spare.
Yeah.
But it said right in the owner's manual that if your tires wear out in 12 to 15,000 miles, that's normal.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. There's certain cars. Chrysler has some little cruisers. A really good tire will go 45, 50,000 miles. A cheap tire is going to go 25,000 miles.
Okay.
Like I said, the Subarus, because like I said, those are all-wheel drive and stuff like that. They're, all-wheel drives are a little bit rougher on tires.
Okay. And what about rotating tires? How often should that be done?
In most cases, 5,000, 6,000 miles is pretty good. But you need to check that the air pressure at least once a month.
Okay.
And up here, we want to run a little bit more than what the door says. Inside your door, on the pillar or on the door itself, will be a sticker that says, the weight rating of the vehicle and all that, and it'll have tire pressure. And it might say 30 pounds. But if you run 30 pounds up here in the hills with all of it turning, you're going to wear off the insides and outsides of the tires.
Yeah, because the car actually does kind of ooze around on that sidewall for it, doesn't it? Okay.
Yeah, and if you put a little more air pressure in there, it helps push out the center of the tire more and keeps things from rolling onto those outside edges as much. I'm just talking, 3 to 4, maybe even 5 pounds. Tires are just something you got to look at and adjust for it as it's, as they wear.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no perfect answer, and like I said, you drive around by yourself, and then you throw 6 people and 6 suitcases, and hey, we got to put some more air in here.
That's a whole different load on those 4 tires rather than just you commuting down the hill to work.
Yeah.
What? And I'm sorry, I've been skipping around a little bit, but I mentioned to you, what's that maintenance thing that people just manage to forget regularly up here? What is that maintenance thing that you would remind people to pay attention to?
Well, like I said, keep air in your tires. Check your coolant and oil levels every week.
Okay. Don't rely on that dashboard light to come on and...
Well, by the time the light comes on, you got a problem.
It's too low, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And let's see, batteries, you can just look at the top of the battery. Batteries tend to leak a little bit around where the lead posts go. That's another thing cold is, that bad connection, and you're going to be stuck in the cold.
Yep.
Coolant, oil, tires, and pay attention to your lights and gauges.
Now that dreaded check engine light, is that, and depending on who you talk to, because if you talk to somebody who has a little bit of what I said earlier, the shade tree mechanic mentality, they think those lights were put in by the dealers to get you into that service bay more often. But when that comes on, can it be anything under the sun, or is that usually something major that's going on under the hood?
Typically, a check engine light, which can include the motor and the transmission, has to do with the emissions.
Oh, okay.
Now, emissions, if your transmission, most transmissions are at least a 4-speed automatic. If you got an automatic, be 4-speed, and they also have what they call a lock-up torque converter. So that your car is actually like a manual transmission when you get up, 50, 55 miles an hour. There's no slippage between the motor and transmission.
Okay.
Say that thing quits working. There's solenoids that to control that. There's clutches in there that can go bad. Then our gas mileage is going to go down because we're not.
Okay. We
got a slipping transmission now. And it might work fine. You might think it's working. You might not even know there's a problem because they do shift in very easy. But anyway, like I said, it has to do with emissions. And so when we're getting less fuel mileage, of course, we're burning more gas, which means we're putting out more stuff. Gas cap loose. Okay, if your gas cap's loose, your check engine light can come on.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that started happening in 95, 96, depending on the brand of your car, with what we call onboard diagnostics system, the second system, on OBD2.
Okay.
So if you got a loose gas cap, vapors leak out. Those vapors are called hydrocarbon. And it's unburnt gas and stuff.
Sure.
So that's an emissions problem. If you got a misfire, your light will come on, and if the misfire's bad enough, it'll blink.
Oh, okay.
Anytime your check engine light's blinking, you need to get it in the shop because it's possibly, a very good possibility, it's running in a way that's going to damage catalytic converter.
Okay.
And catalytic converters, depending on your car, a cheap one's not a nice experience to have to go buy. Some of these things are a couple, $3,000.
My gosh, and that's one of those things in the car that I think the vast majority of us, we know it has something to do with emissions and smog control, but what does a catalytic converter do?
Okay, well, I touched on hydrocarbons a bit ago. Hydrocarbons are part of your exhaust. That's what comes out of your motor. You've got your combustion going off, you get hydrocarbons, which are called, we call them HC. We get carbon monoxide, which is CO. And the other main gas is NOx, N-O-X, nitrogen oxide. Nitrogen oxide's what you see in the atmosphere is people call smog.
Okay.
All of them are bad. So a catalytic converter it can be of several designs. It can be beads, or it can be like a honeycomb.
Okay.
And the exhaust passes through this. It's a ceramic type block or pellets. And these are coated with several things. Platinum, rhodium, and now that gold's so cheap, they're using gold. And as the name implies, catalytic converter, it's a catalyst. It has to be hot to operate, but as the gases go through, these metals separate the molecules. So basically what we're getting out of the pipe, the exhaust pipe now, is CO2 and water.
I see.
Carbon dioxide, which, can't do nothing about the CO2 yet.
Yeah.
But by burning less gas and things and having your car running right, of course, we're going to put out less carbon dioxide. Let's see. I'm not trying to think if I'm covering all of this I'm trying not to get too technical. But
that's right.
But that's the way the catalytic converter does it. It uses these precious metals. Once they get to operating temperature, they start breaking down the molecules, the actual molecules, and separate carbon atoms from oxygen atoms and things like this, and quit making our bad gas that we don't, the bad exhaust gas we don't want.
And so will a catalytic converter, will those beads or the metals that are in there acting as that catalyst, do they get too full of the pollutants? I guess I'm asking, will a catalytic converter wear out?
They do, but it takes if your car's running properly, they'll last surprisingly long. I've seen converters over 500,000 miles on them.
Oh, okay.
But if your car's running too rich and you don't fix it, then the converter's not going to work right. It's quite an involved process. I know it's just a catalytic converter, just a chunk of metal it costs you a lot of money.
Yeah, it costs you a lot of money, and down in the city they might steal it out under your hood. But
yeah, come out and boom.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's just a chemical process, and it just breaks everything down and separates it to, a lot less toxic and like I said, water and CO2.
Okay. Well, we're getting close to our end here, Rick, and what I just kind of wanted to do is give you a chance to tell folks, we've kind of touched and skipped around all over the place. Is there anything we haven't mentioned to folks that is important with their cars that in your experience they're not paying attention to, or they're not doing correctly, or?
Well, I'm pretty fortunate. I have some really good customers.
and you've trained them right?
Well, no. Some of these might come back on me here. No, like I said, lights come on for a reason. And if you don't know the reason, most of your owner's manuals in your cars will tell you what every light means, and how you should approach it. And if not, like I said, I have customers come in all the time with, "Hey, this is on. Do I need to worry about this?" Well, yeah, it's a light on. You need to do something about it, but it's not going to break down and leave you stranded.
Yeah.
And
so
that's
you've got until next week when it's more convenient for you to come in, rather than that thing flashing and you better get in here.
Yeah, I'm on my way to San Francisco. Not in this car, you're not.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is you get ready for a longer trip. And really, we don't often think about that. Just that trip to the valley, that can be kind of a journey for a car that's not running in its optimal shape, right?
Yeah, and up here we have no cell phone service in half the areas, and like I said, a cold winter night, might be snowing, might be raining, and so you need to stay up with it.
Keep paying attention. Those lights come on for a reason. I like that. That's, we're not used to those lights until you've gotten the newer cars, and it just. One more thing we've got to pay attention to, so the checkbook isn't running on empty like the gas tank, huh?
Well, yeah, it's. I lost my thought.
Well, that's all right.
Dingy.
That's all right. We're about out of time, too. I want to thank you very much for being here, Rick, and thank you, folks, for joining us here on John Wade's Calaveras Living. He will be with you again soon. I'm Mike Taylor. Thank you very much for joining us, and I'll see you next time.